Hi, and welcome to this episode of Collaborwocky. Join our vibrant community and watch our latest episodes at modusinstitute.com/Collaborwocky.
All right. So, topic one, Collaborwocky with Esther Derby is uh, shifting ideas about leadership away from traditional ideas of charisma and people taking charge. Esther, would you like to kick off that topic?
Sure. Um, I think that some of the assumptions behind our traditional modes of leadership are deeply embedded in well, I might as well just say class. Where the people who knew and then the people who did, brains and brawn kind of separation. And I think that is, aside from having some well, let's just say I don't think it fits my moral frame. I also think it's just not suited for the complexity we live in today. Yeah, I'm really interested in how can we move away from those ideas where management is for the few, and agency is for the few, to um, a situation where there's agency for more people and we have leaders at all levels.
And that's a very central concept in the collaboration equation book, is that leadership is a verb, it's not a position.
Yeah.
And that anyone can engage in leadership at any time because leadership is merely doing the right thing at the right time with other people. So leadership should also be a collaborative act. And the reason that it gets attributed to a single human being is because we don't have our work visualized. We don't actually know what's going on. And so people are able to take credit for the actions of others. And then that suddenly makes them leaders. And what was interesting for us is seeing how that worked when you applied those principles to the construction industry in New York. And it turned out that people really took to it really quickly, even though they have titles like superintendent, or project executive. Almost immediately, when you introduced a collaborative framework into that system, people realized, oh my God, my neck doesn't have to be on the line for everything. And then after that, they didn't like charisma at all because they're like, no, the system will work itself out. We just have to make sure that we build the right system.
Yeah, I think having the work visualized helps. I also think it helps to have a model of how to kind of look at how are people working together? How are they making use of information? Do they have enough information? They have too many ideas. Are they, not aware of space and time and value propositions? I think it's also helpful to have models to look at, to know, what sort of intervention can we make that will make work better for everyone.
Yeah. Yes. So standard work for complexity has been an interesting thing to explore for us for the last couple of years, and that's when you have a group and you think you know what you're about to do, like you have a plan, and then you run into some weird. Do you freak out? Do you hide it? Do you ignore it? Or do you actually do something about it? And a lot of what leadership ends up being for a charisma based leadership model is that those are the people who point out when things might go off the rails and then demand that other people fix it, rather than the system and the people in the system noting, hey, there's a slight change here. Why don't we alter our plans a little bit before it becomes going off the rails and fix it? And what I love about that is that it actually is the perfect marriage at that point of lean rhetoric and agile rhetoric, which I've always kind of had a hard time playing together. It's like, do we Do we strike at change when the cost of change is low? Yes. Now, do we have the tools to actually make that change? Yes.
Nice. I think it's interesting culturally how many of the stories we tell, the heroic stories, are, someone came in and saved the day and managed to get the ship through the ice floes and save all these people, and it was torturous and they were cold and they almost starved. is because they had the wrong ideas and did the wrong things and made all sorts of really poor decisions, and then somehow had to pull themselves out of it. But I think that's very deeply embedded, to look at that idea of saving people versus did people think about it prudently, did they make adjustments.
I think it behooves us to look at, why do people embrace charismatic leadership when they do? So they often embrace it in times of chaos and upheaval
and
right?
uncertainty. Yeah.
And uncertainty. So how do we create systems up front that provide people with that sense of clarity, that sense of certainty, that sense of agency, right? So we know that visual controls help. We know that being explicit that people have agency, likewise, is important. Past couple of calls we've had with a client recently, we utilize an example from an old client where leadership didn't understand why people weren't just taking the ball and running with it. And people were like, well, we don't have the agency to do it. And leadership,
we don't have a system to do it.
Yeah. And leadership was like, it was always there, like you could always click your heels and go home. It was always in you. But they needed to be told explicitly, you have the agency. But likewise, what they weren't being told is that you have the psychological safety to exercise that agency. Yeah. So you can't have the agency without the psychological safety.
I think there's another aspect to that I run into a lot in companies as they are getting bigger, is that people don't understand the context. They may understand kind of the day-to-day work, but they don't understand the bigger context of, who are our customers? How are we serving our customers? How do we make money? How would we always treat our customers, never treat our customers? They are lacking all of that contextual information. So it makes it very hard for them to act on the agency, even if they have psychological safety.
Right.
They don't have role definition and they don't have current context.
Yeah, I'm not even sure role definition is the key. I think context is huge.
Yeah. So in the way that we work, the current context of the work is generally what drives the role definition. Mm. So not role definition in this is your job description, but role definition in that this is the area in which you can safely operate. If this problem requires somebody from outside of that safe operation zone, then you can collaborate with this person over here to get that work done, so that people don't act out of hand, but that they do act.
Yeah, I think about that as bounded autonomy.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Right. So people know, they know that within, whatever the boundaries are, whether it's financial or, certain types of solutions or whatever, you can play in here. But if you hit the boundary, it doesn't mean you can't act. It means you have a conversation.
Right.
And if those aren't explicit, then it's people lose their psychological safety.
Yeah, I was going to quickly interject and say, just from the boundaries, like, there are no expectations that conversations are going to happen, right? And that should be made explicit. That is what I found, at least in my experience, is because I work in education. It's basically like a cycle of a degree. So every 4 years or so, you've got this change, this series of uncertainties where some sort of savior comes. If you come at the funny point in that cycle of change, it's not going to go very well for those that are on the team. They fail to understand the context, what drove the previous sorts of initiatives, and nothing is, in some sense, codified to say we have the agency to act again, for the delivery of content for students, or the infrastructure to support that, to have the conversations when that fuzzy line of where are we going to end with these boundaries and how that shows up. So I found that to be very interesting. And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning into this episode of Collaborwocky, where curiosity meets community. Remember, the journey doesn't end here. Whether you're sipping coffee, commuting, or even Gemba walking, lean into the agile rhythm of life, and may your personal Kanban boards be forever whip limited. Until next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep those headphones snug. This is the Collaborwocky team signing off. Join us for the next episode on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or at modusinstitute.com/Collaborwocky.